Hey everybody, and welcome back to some more Oxygen Not Included. At the end of the last episode, we kind of finalized, or almost finalized, this setup over here. It's a bit of a mess, but I think it should work as intended. The idea here is that the cool steam vent will output steam at a rate of 4,000 grams per second, and that steam will come out at 110 degrees Celsius. We need to get that steam up to 125 degrees Celsius for it to be able to be used by the steam turbine. To do that, we have the thermo aquatuner here. The thermo aquatuner is connected to a loop of water. The water enters the thermo aquatuner, is cooled down. When it's cooled down, the heat that is removed from the water is then output to the steam around it, thus heating up the steam in this box, hopefully enough to get it to that 125 degree mark, at which point the steam then enters the steam turbine and then is turned into both power and water. The water comes out at 95 degrees Celsius and is dropped into this reservoir, and then at some point, once we have this system up and running, we're going to use the water from the reservoir in our electrolyzer to produce oxygen for our base. That is the plan at least. However, we have still got 22.4 cycles before this guy actually starts outputting steam, and so we can't test this until that time comes. And so for the time being, we're going to go back over to the main portion of the base, and I've got a couple of things that I want to work on in today's episode. So the first thing that I want to work on is water, because right now we do not have much clean water coming in. We have almost completely dried up this pool down here. And so one thing that I did realize between episodes is that the steam vent that we've got here, even though it's outputting a whopping 4 kilograms of steam per second, and that is a 1-to-1 ratio, and so it is essentially outputting 4 kilograms of water per second, if we look at the calculated average output, it's only averaging about 1 kilogram per second of water over the course of its 124 cycle active period. And so what that means is that looking down here at our electrolyzer, the electrolyzer requires 1,000 grams per second of water. And so effectively, if we can get this up and running, and if we can get almost all of the steam and turn it into water, we only just have enough to actually power our electrolyzer all of the time with the steam vent. And so for other things around the base, most importantly, our bristle blossoms over here, we're not going to have enough water to irrigate these bristle blossoms going forward. And between episodes, I ran the numbers. We need about 20 kilograms per day, or I think exactly 20 kilograms per day of water per plant, which works out to about 400 grams of water per second. And so ideally, we probably need another steam vent just to be able to cover all of the water that is used throughout our base. Of course, we do get a bit of a water gain from our bathrooms, and so we do gain a little bit of water when our duplicates use those. But for the most part, if we're going to keep water going and keep our base running, we're going to have to find another source of water. Now, thankfully, I did notice right at the top of the map here, there is yet more clean water. And so despite how bizarrely close these two steam vents are, I think we might have another steam vent, either a cool one or a standard one, up at the top of the map here. And if that's the case, then we can probably use that, hopefully, to provide the rest of our base with the water that it needs. But before we do that, and before we try and even go and explore up and see if there is a water vent up here, I think for the time being, what I'm going to do is, under plumbing, I'm going to temporarily reconnect some of our polluted water, which we do have quite a large amount of. We've got almost 4 reservoirs backed up with polluted water. I think for the time being, I'm going to reconnect that up to our water sieve, and then reconnect the water sieve up to the clean water pipe, just so that we can actually make sure that our base continues to function whilst we wait for our steam vent to get going. And also because of the fact that, of course, we do need more water than the steam vent can provide. And once I've got this set up, I think I'm also going to start looking towards potentially digging out and getting this water down here. We did talk about this a little bit in a previous episode. I was kind of hoping that we wouldn't need it once we got our steam vent up and running, but I think unfortunately the steam vent, as we've just shown, is not going to be able to provide enough water for everything in the base. And so for the time being, I think I'm going to dig out a little bit of the slime here and try and get it all really as condensed as we possibly can, and try and get it all into one singular location. And so we'll schedule some dig tasks there. We'll let our duplicates go ahead and get that done. I think that does mean I'm going to have to open this door to our duplicates. This area, once again, is becoming a bit of a mess, and it's becoming a mess in a way that I'm not quite sure how it's happening. Right here, we have what seems to be liquid, like gas water, which you would assume is steam, but we seem to have like a very thin layer of water at the bottom of this room here, which is preventing the natural gas from sinking down and being pumped away by these gas pumps. And thus the natural gas is kind of flowing up here. The chlorine is too dense, and so it's pushing natural gas up. And whenever somebody comes through one of these mechanized airlocks, the natural gas makes its way in, and now none of our mealwood for our Drekos is growing. And all I have to do here is schedule a mop. It happened before, and I just mopped it all up. I don't know what it is. There doesn't seem to be any water here. And if I'm not mistaken, this doesn't actually output water to the world. It does output water via the pipe, but that's been taken away. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there, like how it doesn't appear there's any water, but it's like there's a little bit right here, but there's no way that that is stopping all of the natural gas from flowing down. Either way, that's a thing that needs taken care of. We also, as I mentioned a few times before, need to do a complete rework of this area down here to prevent things like this happening in the future. But for now, we do have more pressing matters at hand. The first issue that we have is carbon dioxide, which is getting dangerously high on the map here. Thankfully, I don't think that that is due to us having a large amount of carbon dioxide. If we look around, you can see that it's kind of floating around 500 grams in each tile here. I think it's mostly an issue of us not getting enough oxygen pumping into the base, and that is because in the last episode, I disconnected one of these pipes over here to make sure that our exosuits got all the oxygen that they need. And so real quick, if we like priority right now, get that replaced, that should start pumping oxygen into the base again and should hopefully start pushing some of this chlorine and the carbon dioxide down to the bottom of the map. That's, of course, not a long-term solution. Ideally, we do want to get maybe a carbon skimmer back online, potentially even start trying to ranch some slicksters. The slicksters do consume quite a large amount of carbon dioxide and do produce crude oil as a byproduct. And so I don't see any right now with the areas that we've uncovered. But if we could find some more slicksters around the map here, we could potentially wrangle them and bring them back up into what could potentially be a crude oil farm and also a carbon dioxide dump at the bottom of the map here. But again, we still have more pressing matters than that to deal with in today's episode. The most pressing matter that we have to deal with right now is, of course, once again, our bristle blossoms. I feel like this is a never-ending fight that I kind of want to try and settle once and for all in today's episode. So once again, despite the fact that we have 3 Wheezeworts in this room here, our bristle blossoms have still managed to creep up above that 30°C mark. And so right now their body temperature is too hot and they cannot grow. And so what I'm thinking of doing here is essentially getting rid of the space heater, because it occurred to me between episodes that it makes no sense for us to have this kind of dire need for cooling and at the same time to be using our power to produce heat in this part of the base. And so my thought process here is if we get rid of the space heater, what we can probably do is utilizing the thermoregulator, which we used previously to cool down our oxygen. If we put that in the room here, we could then go ahead and have 2 gas pumps in each of these rooms, because of course I do want both of these to be as cold as possible. And then using a thermosensor, this guy right here, and I think I'll put this probably like right here. This is going to be maybe the hottest part of the room because it's directly between these 2 lights here. So if we put a thermosensor here and here, we can then check when the room is below, let's say 28°C, just to make sure there's a bit of leeway for the plants to grow there. If it is below 28°C, we can then trigger the pump, have the pump pump the oxygen out of this room over into the thermoregulator. What that's going to do is that's going to cool the oxygen right down, and simultaneously, much like with the thermo aquatuner, it's going to output that heat into the room around it, which is good for our pincher peppers here, and then it's going to pump that cold oxygen back around into this room. And maybe on the way, we could also use some radiant pipe to maybe cool down some of these rooms as well, because you may have noticed that the briar seeds that we planted in these lovely wall pots aren't growing because it's so hot in the core of our base. And on top of that, I also think that we could probably do with moving some of the high temperature items out of the core of our base, specifically the gas range and the electric grill. The gas range in particular, I think, is one that's outputting quite a lot of heat. And so I'm thinking about moving this room and then potentially even this room, because the rock crusher does also output quite a bit of heat. And so I might move both of these rooms up and kind of into this area up here, which I think, by the way, is another source of heat right now. You'll notice this area up here is kind of creeping up towards 40°C, and I think having this wall of tile directly touching this kind of hot biome here is transferring quite a lot of that heat into this room. And so another thing that I would like to do is potentially encase this room completely in mesh tile. That's going to not only keep the heat out, but once we start cooling the room down, it's also going to help to keep all of that cold inside of the room as well. And so let's go ahead and schedule the deconstruction of the space heater here. I'm going to set that to priority 5, I guess, because they're going to get that done right away. Fantastic. We'll throw down the thermoregulator, which thankfully uses significantly less power than the aqua tuner. This thing, I believe, uses 240 watts, if I'm not mistaken. It does indeed. So a little bit more expensive than the space heater, but we desperately need to make sure that our bristle blossoms are online. If our bristle blossoms go offline, our duplicants begin to starve and they're going to die. So we need to make sure that these are online. Food and water are some of the key ingredients, of course, that we need for our base to continue functioning as intended. So we'll go ahead and we'll hook these up like so. We will also go ahead and throw down some mesh tile, essentially all the way around the outside of this room here. And I think I'll also go ahead and replace these insulated tiles here as well. We really want to try and keep as much of the heat in here as we possibly can. We are going to have to dig out a bit of a pathway for our duplicants to be able to get in at the top here, but that shouldn't be too big of an issue whatsoever. We'll, of course, hook these up with automation wire like so and like so. And for now, I will set this to output a green signal if the temperature is below, let's say 28 degrees Celsius, and we can do the same on this side as well. If you drop below 28 degrees Celsius, send out a green signal for this guy to begin pumping, at which point the gas is going to come out. And I think for now we do want this to be insulated pipe, because what we don't want to happen is we don't want, of course, all of the heat coming out of here and then just bleeding out into the base. We want as much of it as possible going into this room, going into the thermo aqua tuner. And so I think for now we'll do something like this, and then across all the way over and in right about here, at which point we will then come out down here. And I think I will use radiant pipe all the way along and back over to like here, at which point we'll switch back to insulated pipe and we'll go up and split out between two gas vents, which I guess we'll put right smack bang in the middle of the room, like there and there, and then connect those up with, I guess, any pipe. I don't think it really matters which pipe we connect these up with. But if we do something like that, not only is that going to cool down this room, but it should also ideally cool down some of this room as well. Now, if we could make this setup a bit more efficient in terms of cooling this room down. If we didn't use radiant pipe, obviously the gas will be cooler when it reaches this room here. But I do think it's important that we try and cool down other parts of the base as well, especially given that the water that we have coming in is also quite hot, as I mentioned in the last episode. So we'll leave it like this for now. We'll see how the system works. If we get to a point where the oxygen that comes back in here is not cool enough, like if it's getting too much heat as it comes through this room, then we could potentially look at replacing some of this with insulated pipe. And to be fair, I might go ahead and replace this middle section here with a little bit of insulated pipe, because although it would be nice to cool the whole base down, I think it's more important to cool down the areas of the base where our duplicants spend most of their time, and they do spend a little bit of time at least in the new great halls here. And so we'll do something like this for now. We'll see how well it works. We'll look at getting this pump going down here. I am going to set these to like priority 8 because I do want this getting done sooner rather than later, because we are on the brink of not having enough water for our duplicants to use. How is the oxygen doing? The oxygen is doing fantastic. That is all good. I might also hook up a bit of the oxygen coming in here and pipe that into this system as well, just because I'm a little cautious that there's not actually that much oxygen in this room. You'll see there's about 250 grams-ish in each room here, and so once we start pumping the oxygen out, I think we are quite likely to create a vacuum in the farm there. And so real quick, we will use a gas bridge just to make sure the oxygen doesn't go down when it gets to this intersection here, and then we'll just have this run up from here and connecting right about there. That way, half of the oxygen that comes from this pipe should go up and enter this room over here. We'll do that for a little while until this room is nice and full of oxygen, at which point we can go ahead and get rid of that pipe and just have it all come through to this gas vent as usual. We'll also, of course, go ahead and schedule the dig of this area here. I'm not too worried about the little tiny bits of chlorine here. We're definitely not going to get those two. And this one, you know, it's one tile of chlorine. The rest of this is now polluted oxygen and regular oxygen. So I think at this point in time, we can go ahead and dig that out. We do definitely want to make sure our bleach stone goes to the right place. I think right now it's coming down here. It is. So they should put that down there as soon as it is ready to go. And I would also, that's set to priority 9. Excuse me. Did I lock these doors? I didn't. So I would assume that they can get down to that mop task. They're just choosing not to do it right now, which I guess is fine. Let's have a look at our printing pod real quick. I would like to see what they have on offer. A Wallpaper. I don't think we want this guy just yet. And I'm still not at the point, I don't think, where we can take on another duplicant. I did run the numbers between episodes on the electrolyzer. And I think right now, if the electrolyzer is running at full speed, like it's running all of the time, we should be able to produce enough oxygen to sustainably supply 10 duplicants, and so we do have a little bit of wiggle room on the oxygen front. And if we can get this setup over here working as intended, we can get it so that the bristle blossoms are growing all of the time, then we should also be able to feed 10 duplicants with all of the bristle blossom that we have here and all the stuffed berries that we're making. It's just a case of getting all of that stuff set up completely, at which point we can then look into getting some more duplicants. Whilst they do that, another thing that was pointed out to me in the comment section is our natural gas generators are not necessarily as efficient as they can be. And the reason for that is that you may remember a few episodes back over here, we found a natural gas geyser. And this thing, of course, is pumping out natural gas. And you'll notice that all of our reservoirs here are actually full, and this guy's still outputting steam. That is because when I ran the calculations, when I tried to figure out how much this natural gas generator would use, I assumed that it would be on all the time. I ran the numbers using 90 grams per second and assumed that it would run 100% of the time. But you'll notice that because of the fact that we have a smart battery that turns off when it gets full, this natural gas generator is not on 100% of the time. In fact, it's only on maybe 70 or 80% of the time. And so we actually end up with a massive backlog of natural gas. And so I'm thinking, for now at least, what I might do is hook up, or re-hook up I should say, this second natural gas generator. That's hopefully going to start to more efficiently use the natural gas, but not only that, it's also going to hopefully alleviate some of our power woes that we've been starting to feel due to the lack of coal in the base. And so really this is going to be a huge help to us here. I'm going to put that at top priority there because I want that back online really as soon as possible. I'd also like to get that hooked back up to some heavy watt wire here. We are going to have to use a joint plate. That's not a problem. We can do something like this and like this to hook that up to the same network. But what that's going to do is it's going to require us using significantly less coal to power our coal generators and also significantly less hydrogen for our hydrogen generator, both of which are resources that we really don't have in abundance right now. And so hopefully this will help with kind of keeping our base afloat here. It might even be worth disabling maybe one or two of these coal generators now because they are spending time tuning up the coal generators even though they don't have any coal in them. And so I will go ahead and schedule the disabling of one of these coal generators so that hopefully they can kind of focus on tuning up the natural gas generator. They, of course, can't tune this one up because it's outside of the room. I guess in a future episode, we could look to moving it back in, especially if we are going to get rid of one of these coal generators. That would free up a bit of space for some wiggle room there. But for now, I want to make sure that we focus in on trying to get this all set up here. Now, another thing that we could do to bring our temperature in here down a little bit and also to even the temperature out across the room here is put down a couple of these temp shift plates. I think I talked about these a little bit at the end of the last episode. But if we make these out of iron, they have a very high thermal heat conductivity, meaning that they can move the heat around the room much, much better than just the air around it can normally do. So if we were to go ahead and put, for example, one of these, say either side of each Wheezewort for now, something like this. Not only do they soak up a lot of heat as soon as you place them in, they do have a very high heat density, and so the very second you place them into the room does get colder, but on top of that, they're also going to do a much better job of distributing the kind of coolness that's coming from our Wheezewort here. And so, real quick, I will make those a priority 9, just so I can show you guys how these work. And we will, of course, do the same thing on the left room here. It's just the right room is the one where none of these are growing right now because it's just so hot at this moment in time. We'll also set all of this stuff to priority 8 as well so that our duplicates can prioritize that and get that going. But I think this is hopefully going to work out quite well. There is going to be a brief bit of downtime here where our pincher peppers are not quite hot enough, and it might also not be a bad idea to put some temp shift plates in here as well, just so we can kind of even out the temperature across the room. It might not work so well in the beginning because, as I mentioned a second ago, they do soak up a lot of heat as soon as you place them in. Like, as soon as these go down, I have a feeling a lot of these bristle blossoms should hopefully come back online. I will super speed this to hopefully speed up the effects. Oh man, it looks like these were even hotter than I expected because even with the temp shift plates soaking up some of that heat in here, it's still not enough to to fully get these guys back online just yet. Okay, so we desperately need to get this system going here. We need to get all these pipes built and get the cooling actively going here. It looks like our duplicants are more than up to the task, and they're pretty much there, honestly. They just need to hook up the automation wire, the power wire, and the vents, and at that point they should be good to go. And ideally, with this system, we can actually maybe go ahead and take the Weezewarts out and repurpose them somewhere else, potentially in trying to set up some kind of cooling solution for the base as a whole, or maybe even trying to use them to cool down some of the steam from one of these gas vents. That being said, over here, we do have this dormant steam vent, which I will analyze, because apparently now that I've uncovered just a little fraction of it, it will actually begin pumping out steam now. So I'm going to analyze it to figure out when. If we analyze it, it should tell us when it's going to actually start erupting. And I would very much like to know that, because if we just kind of leave it, eventually we're going to end up with a very, very hot area around here, which of course is not what we're after. And so what I think I might do for the time being is just box this in, just build like a little box around it and try and keep all of that, so make it so that it overpressurizes immediately and all of the steam that it produces is just kind of contained within a little area around it. Apparently we don't have the copper required to build this automation wire. Can we make it out of something else? We can make it out of iron. So we'll do that, and we'll schedule that for priority 8, like so. Right now this is just on all the time, which I think is honestly fine. I think most of the gas that's coming out right now is above the temperature that we want it to be. And so you'll see over here, it's coming in at 31 degrees and then pumping out at around 15, 16 degrees, and then transferring that heat across and into this room here. You'll see the temperature is climbing quite rapidly, 46, 50, I saw 53 degrees Celsius. It is going up quite a fair bit there. And I assume that the gas is losing quite a bit of that heat as it goes across here. Yeah, you'll see by the time it gets to here, it's back up around 27, 28 degrees. So it is definitely a few degrees colder than when it comes out of the room initially, but it's not super cold like it is when it comes out of the thermoregulator. However, over time, as these rooms get colder, the temperature of the oxygen that's reaching this room should be higher, right? So hopefully, over time, things will get better here. Finally, we're starting to see our bristle blossoms come back alive. It's taken quite a bit of work, but ideally with this system, they should always remain online, because the thermosensor here is going to make sure that if ever the room gets too hot, then the pumps are going to come online and the oxygen is going to get cooled. And so going forward, I don't think that we should ever have to worry about these bristle blossoms again. Hopefully they will just continue to grow forever and we don't have to worry about them and everything will be fine. And on top of that, these are also going as well. You'll see the temperature has risen again in this room to where all but one of the pincher peppers are now back online and working as well. We do need to delete this, actually, because I'm a fool, and I should have made this out of gold, because right now it has reached 77 degrees Celsius very, very quickly, and thus is overheating. So we'll do this again, this time with gold amalgam, like so. Of course, we will set that to a priority now, and we'll hook that up with the same pipes as before, and hopefully it doesn't get quite that hot. It might do, honestly, at least in the initial stages here, whilst this room is cooling down. Once the room does get cold, the idea is that the gas pumps will, of course, go offline and stop using power and stop pumping the gas around. Mia, why are you sleeping on the floor, my friend? Do you not have access to a bedroom? Are you not assigned to a bed? I'm fairly certain that she should be. She is, and she can definitely get down there, right? Like, I've not been making Mia sleep on the floor all this time. She does have a little bit of stress creeping up there, but I think that might just be a fluke. Hopefully tomorrow night she'll be in her bed, snoozing away. But as I was saying, over time, these will hopefully get to a point where the pumps are not on all of the time. They'll only come on intermittently when the temperature kind of creeps up above that 28 degrees Celsius mark. However, in the early stages here, the thermoregulator is going to be on quite a lot of the time. You'll see we've kind of hit a food shortage for a brief second there due to the fact that these were offline for a couple of cycles. This guy is creeping up close to 100 degrees Celsius. It might actually overheat again, which would be pretty insane. There's not too much we can do about it, really, outside of just kind of repairing it. I guess we could turn it off, right? If it's been on for too long, or if the gas around it gets too hot. But for now, I think getting the bristle blossom is more important than having to repair this over and over again. So for now, I'm going to leave it. How far away are we from our first eruption? We're still 16 cycles away, which is quite a while. And we're 11.2 cycles away from this steam vent over here erupting. So I am going to uncover it. because I don't think at this point in time there's any reason not to uncover it. I've been told that it will erupt either way. So we'll uncover that and we'll work on boxing that up. Some people did posit the idea of potentially trying to combine the steam from both steam geysers and using that to power steam jet turbines on their own, with the steam over here coming out at 500 degrees and the steam over here coming out at 110 degrees, and also with this steam vent pumping out much more cold steam than this one does hot steam. It might be possible to balance it out to where the steam reaches a temperature that's around 200 degrees, maybe? I'm not quite sure what the temperature would be if we combine the steam from this geyser with the steam from this geyser, but so long as it's not too hot, we could potentially use that to just power steam turbines without having to use the thermo aqua tuner at all, which might be quite useful. So I do want to try and see if this system works, because if it does, we can always go ahead and tear this down and use it with what I think is a new steam vent up here, and then repurpose this steam vent to work with this steam vent as a way of just producing power, as well as excess water, which would be kind of the best of all worlds, right? So we'll see how well that works out. For now, I am going to box this guy in entirely, like so. We are going to need, of course, more ladders to make that work. I think we'll just have ladders run up like this and dig across like so. All of that is going to be priority 9 due to the fact that this guy is going to start erupting in just 11 cycles here, which is much closer than I am comfortable with. And then down here, we will, of course, put down our liquid pump. I think we will need a couple more ladders here to get our duplicates down to the bottom there. And then, of course, we'll hook that up with power as well. That does remind me that we can go ahead and delete the pump over by the oil area now. That one probably doesn't serve much of a purpose at this point in time. This annoys me a little bit. You may have noticed just then, when the game pauses, if you're building mid-pause, like while it does its autosave on a new day, it builds these zigzags all the way up. I've done it a few times by accident, where I'll accidentally, be building something, and it just zigzags like all the way up throughout the map. And previously, I've done it with tile, and then accidentally like blocked off rooms and whatnot. It's real weird. It must be a bug of some description, but nevertheless, back over here, let's reconnect that up like so. And then we do also need plumbing, of course, as well. We'll run that all the way up. And for now, connect that up, of course, over to the sieve. Now, I do have to think about how I want to do this, because it's going to come up through here. At the same time, it can't come through the nature reserve, otherwise it is going to get flagged as being not a nature reserve anymore. And so I think what I might do is have it run across and connect up to our pre-existing pipe network. It's going to be a bit of a pain, because it's quite a long way to go here. But if we connect it up like that, and then reinitiate this gas bridge here so they can come over to these reservoirs. It won't come to the reservoirs, it will go up and around and into these reservoirs, because it is all polluted water, but that should work. It is going to require some more ladders over here. That is fine. It's also going to require that we uproot this balm lily here. And then let's not forget, over here I also need to put down some ladders where they uprooted a plant earlier. And again, I'll set this all to priority 8, like so, and like so. Let's not forget about that gas bridge, like that. And we'll also set a priority like immediate on deleting this pipe here, because what I don't want to happen is, there we go, I don't want the polluted water ending up back in the system with the regular water. And so I also don't want that either. Let's delete this pipe also on like priority 10, because I would very much like the water to go this way and then through the water filter and then to where it's supposed to go. We don't strictly need it to go through the water filter. We know it's polluted water, but having this pipe go that way is just easier, and it makes it easier if we do come across more, regular clean water in the future. We can just hook it to the same line, and everything should work out a-okay. May has managed to get herself trapped up at the top here. That does mean that we are now at a priority immediate dig task, please. And maybe even just delete some of these tiles at high priority, because I think May can do that on her own. There we go. Okay, I was a little worried there for a second, although I don't think I needed to be. She looks like she does have a fair amount of oxygen still available to her. It also looks like we didn't actually need to build the ladder, because they can get in and onto this little rock here to build all of this stuff. I guess we'll cancel this dig temporarily while they build everything here, although they can't get up there. So I guess maybe we do need a little bit more ladder and a little bit of digging here. There's no point in repairing this guy just yet until we get the system back online. The reason that this guy is broken, by the way, is that you'll see it's at 562.5 degrees Celsius. The reason for that is that we turned it on in the last episode whilst it was still in a vacuum. And so what happened is, it usually will output the heat to the gas around it. Because there is no gas around it whatsoever, all of the heat that it produced was just immediately kind of soaked up into itself, and it just skyrocketed to 500 plus degrees Celsius, which is kind of insane, and thus why it's broken. But hopefully once the system is up and running, that will not happen again. May is hungry. She should be able to eat. I'm fairly certain. We do have 20,000 kilocalories, and so I assume that her food is going to be ready fairly shortly here. Let's throw down the ladders where that bomb lily was. How is our cooling solution up here doing? This guy is now past the 100 degrees Celsius mark. These guys can grow up to 85 degrees Celsius, and so we do have to keep a bit of an eye out here, because if the room gets too hot, these guys will stop growing again, like these over here. So I'm going to test something here. I'm going to test uprooting the Weezwots, like all three of them, and see if this room is capable of cooling itself without them. That is kind of the ideal scenario, is if we can kind of just copy this, paste it here, and then eventually over here. And if the system can kind of run itself without the Weezwots, then we can use these elsewhere in the base and in other cooling solutions that we might want to use. I also think I will put down some tile here, because there's a lot of pipes now that I think would look a lot nicer if they were covered up. And I quite like the look, even though it is a bit expensive, of the plastic. Now, I don't think it's too expensive. These rooms are, what, 4 by 15, so 60 tiles? So 120 tiles multiplied by 5 is, what, 600? Plastic? We've got like 10,500, so you know what? Sure, let's go ahead and schedule just a bunch of plastic tile. It's got like a really nice blue color, and I think it's going to make that room look nicer, and I think it's also going to make it look cooler. And by cooler, I do, of course, mean temperature-wise. It's going to look cooler. And everybody knows you've got to look cooler to feel cooler. Look at this color. I like that a lot. I also just like the way the wallpaper looks in general around the base, so we'll do that. We'll go ahead and plant a blossom seed right about there. We don't need this many blossom seeds. Of course, we calculated before. I think we only need about 11 or 12 to feed our 8 dupes, but having an excess is always good, just in case this system does fail for whatever reason and we do start to lose kilocalories in the future. Having a backup of food is always going to be good. This guy is still 12 cycles away. I don't think we're going to be able to see this run in today's episode, guys, because it's been 12 cycles already, and we're already a good chunk of the way into the episode, so it might be next episode before we actually get to see the results of our build over there. I will go ahead and throw down those remaining mesh tile, because of course this guy is going to erupt any second now. Do we have our pump online? Not quite yet. They do still need to run the wiring through there, but everything else looks like it is pretty much good to go. Closing in on cycle 365, a full year of our duplicates being alive here, which is pretty crazy. Now, it does look like the Weezwots were maybe doing more work than I was giving them credit for, because instantly these have gone back to not growing, although they're so very close. They're all at 30.1 degrees Celsius. And so it looks like they're just so very close to being able to grow again. So I might leave this for a cycle or so. We do have a good amount of food backed up, so we can afford to kind of test this for a second. But in the long run, I would really like to not have to use the Weezwots where possible. I guess it's not as bad if we have to put like one Weezwot back, but it is so close to being cold enough. Okay, so they finally got the liquid pump down here back online, which is all good. So that water is going to keep us going for at least a couple more cycles here. Up here, I did actually realize just now that these thermosensors are set up incorrectly. Right now, they're set up to send out a green signal if the temperature is below 28 degrees. We want to do the opposite. We want to send out a green signal if the temperature is above 28 degrees. And so we can turn this one off, and I think we can do the same on this side as well, turn this one off. That does mean right now that this room is not quite as cold as it's going to get. You'll see a few of these have started to come back online kind of around the gas vent. I'm hoping that the temp shift plates and also just, you know, more oxygen being pumped in from our electrolyzer will kind of cool this room down even more to the point where maybe these will come back online as well. That one did. Oh, wow. The temperature in there went up quite quickly, actually. It jumped back up to 31 from about 26. That's interesting. Okay, I'm gonna uproot this middle one, and I'll replant the wart seed for now. I'm hoping that we can get away with just the one in the middle, and then we'll do the same on this side as well. We'll uproot 2 of these. I guess, actually, for now it makes more sense on this side at least to uproot the middle one, because this is probably the coolest part of the room, and then maybe try and uproot the rest of them when the room gets a little bit cooler. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense than trying to uproot the ones that are at the warmest part of the room and leave the Weezwort on this side like we've done here with the one that's at the coolest part of the room. But thanks to the temp shift plates, yeah, you can see that that's instantly transferred the heat to both sides of the room there. That is all back online. And I think, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up today's episode there. A bit of a less hectic episode. We didn't get anything crazy done in today's episode. We didn't set up any wacky steam generation systems like this over here, but we bought ourselves some more sustainability. We got a more sustainable supply of food. We've now got more water coming in, which we're definitely going to need. We could still go through and delete more of these, or dig out, I should say, more of this slime here to get even more of this water in here in the future. So we bought ourselves a couple more cycles to play around and try and get these steam geysers up and running. Next time we'll come back, we'll definitely get into this steam vent, see if this works. We might even test out using this real steam vent and not just the cool steam vent, and we'll also look into digging up to the potentially other steam vents at the top here and see if that works as well. But for now, guys, as always, if you did enjoy the video and you want to see more oxygen not included in the future, be sure to go ahead and hit that like button. It really does help out a lot. Leave a comment down below, subscribe if you're new here to get notified as soon as new videos go out. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.